Hey guys, this is Market Update. I want to update you on some of my trades recently. So I had two trades running. One is a perps position, one is a futures position. The futures position was going to expire June 27th. So earlier this week, because that was going to expire, I just rolled that into the perps position. So I had the perps position on from lower levels, and I'm going to run that probably until the end of the year, maybe into early next year. It depends how price action goes. I would add to that if we come down into somewhere near this green box, maybe we come here or a bit lower. I think that would be a pretty decent place to add. As of right now, not really doing anything. I don't want to add here because we may go lower and then you have to sit on it for a while. We may bounce from this as well. You can see this support level now. This was resistance. We're trying to turn it into support. But there's multiple FUDs going on right now, right? Absolute banger tweet from CZ years ago. Multiple FUDs. There's always multiple FUDs. We're still, keeping this support level for now, but the multiple FUDs might get bigger. But anyway, when FUDs happen, right, this is how Bitcoin reacts within 10 and 60 days. 10 days, anything can happen. But after 60 days, you had, the earlier US-Iran escalation or whatever happens now, 20% up after 60 days from that. Even from the pandemic, US election challenges, big time from that one. Russia. Right, all of this, right? So it's multiple FUDs, it's noise, and if you hold Bitcoin for long enough, it's obviously going to go up in fiat currency terms. So anyway, that's my short-term trades on. I'm happy to just be holding that one perps position, keeps it simple. I'll add if we get anywhere down here, I think, and just wait to the end of the year. If you don't have a Bybit account yet, click the link below and sign up. You can get a deposit bonus via that link. Whatever you deposit, they'll give you a bonus to trade with, all the way up to $30,000, depending on how much you trade. Just click the link to find the details down in the description. But look, Bitcoin 11% this year. It's hardly spectacular, given the last few years have been over 100% each year. But we know how Bitcoin moves. It moves very quickly in a few months, right? And you get a big move, 50, 60, 70% within a few months. So I suspect that to happen again, right? You've got multiple FUDs, tariff FUDs, right? The big, beautiful bill FUDs, everything else, right? We work that out. The bill gets passed maybe in July, maybe it goes out towards the end of the year. But the reality is that the free market won't produce enough currency this year to pay government liabilities, which means that fiscal deficits will continue to rise to keep GDP a little bit higher, because the whole game here is they need GDP higher than the interest they pay on their debt. There's a huge amount of debt. We know the story, and I'm sticking with it. This bull market here, after the halving, this white line is typically where we tend to top out. So that's the end of the year. And I think a 50 to 70% move within a couple of months is really what Bitcoin does. And then you're looking, somewhere into this red box, which for me is the box where I'm probably going to close any short-term trades. And then if you're looking to maybe take profits, or you just kind of don't want to get caught at the top of the cycle, you've maybe got a chunk of money that you want to invest. Kind of not the best up here, right? That's when Bitcoin typically starts to fade out and maybe get a bit weak again. But I think we could easily go past this, to be honest. If you look at Powell, who's fighting the fiscal side at the moment, Trump is just overtly saying we're going to kick him out in 2026 and put in someone that's going to drop rates. He actually said yesterday during an interview, he just thinks take everything on the short end right now, in terms of the debt that they have to create to actually pay their liabilities. Put everything on the short end now. When we kick Powell out in 26, then we can just put someone in, drop rates, and then go out on the long end. That's what he said yesterday in an interview, right? So that's amazing because the Fed's supposed to be independent, but we know it isn't really. So the end of the year is, typically fairly bullish for BTC. This would be moving into the, the bull zone. So I'm going to be waiting for this and see what happens, because the reality is deficits will continue. Besant sees 6.5 to 6.7 budget gap. Wow. That just means the free market is not creating enough currency for the government to tax to pay liabilities, and the government has to make that up to make sure GDP remains positive. Otherwise, a big financial crash, which could happen if the Fed waits too long, which Powell seems to always want to do anyway. So as always, low leverage, right? Don't get caught out. Dollar cost average through the volatility. This is up from 3% just 4 to 5 months ago. Besant said he wanted 333, so a 3% deficit. That's not going to happen. So even the tariffs, they're not working. Yes, you can see tariff revenue is increasing a little bit, but that's a tax. So a tax doesn't create GDP, does it? So they need the big, beautiful bill to come in. Cut taxes, that's the stimulus. So I think all of that's coming, and just get through the FUDs, right? Get through the FUDs, get through the noise. There's going to be a budget deficit. They're going to try their best to put GDP higher. They want Powell to cut rates because they want the stock market up, because that leads into higher inflation. They want to inflate the economy. That's what they want to do, and they've told us they want to do that. So keeping my perps positions and Bitcoin for the win, because it's going to price all of that in. Despite the multiple FUDs, we all know the game here, right? Which is you need stimulus, you need GDP higher, you need currency created, because there's a shortfall between the government liabilities and the amount of currency that's created by commercial banks in the free market. That shortfall is the debt creation, right? And you've got here debt interest payments in red. So what they're going to cut, you can't cut any of this, and you don't actually want to cut any of this, because if you cut and you reduce the amount of dollars in circulation, that means the price level falls. If the price level of everything falls, that means the debt that you currently have becomes more expensive. So it's a catch-22 situation, and of course we're in Bitcoin, so we can just let this ride out. But you're not going to cut social security or health or defense or income security. None of that's going to get cut, but you can, around the edges, try and manipulate these interest rates, and that's why Powell is being pressured by Trump and everyone else in his administration to cut rates. They need the rates down so that they can try and get the interest down in relation to GDP, and they want to inflate GDP through the big, beautiful bill and everything else. So that's the game, right? It is highly unlikely that 3 or 4% deficits can be achieved without either a sustained period of significant negative real rates. So they want interest rates down and they want to run GDP hot to try and debase the debt to GDP level, right? Or a brief period of face-peelingly negative real rates, which is pandemic-style panic. Now, Powell seems to enjoy the panic policy. He's been late in his whole entire term, right? Everything he does is late, late, late. He's slow and steady is not what his policy is. He is wait until the very end, panic, massive flood of policy stimulus and everything else. I don't know, that's just his style. It's above my pay grade why he wants to act like that, but that's how he behaves. So I would just assume his behavior is not going to change too much. He's not slow and steady. He waits and waits and waits, massive panic, huge, face-peelingly negative real rates. So is money printing going to occur? Well, with massive fiscal deficits, it's kind of hard to print money on the monetary side as well, right? Because then you just create insane inflation, and you want to create inflation, you want to debase the debt, but it has to be within this level. Otherwise, if it's too high, then you start to get social unrest. It's an unsolvable situation. We know this. It's a Ponzi scheme. You can't taper a Ponzi. Inflation, it's not exactly high or growing right now. It's actually mostly soft and coming down to target. So when is Powell going to actually move? Late. That's his style. And so late and panic, right? That's just what's seemingly he's going to do. So we have to make sure that, if you're in leverage positions, low leverage, because if he waits and waits and there's a panic, that's when the market comes down. Then the policy comes in, but you have to make sure you don't get liquidated for that. Or dollar cost average and just chill, right? Because you're not going to get stopped out of anything. This is KC Fed National Labour Market Conditions Index. You can see potentially a leading indicator for the unemployment rate heading higher. So there is data starting to come out that there is a softening in the real economy here. Of course there is, because without stimulus, tariffs are a tax. So they're not a stimulus, they're anti-stimulus. When you tax people, you reduce the price level comes down, debt becomes more expensive, businesses start to tighten. It's very clear. So when they're going to turn, I don't know, but they have to, obviously, because we know the game. The game is liabilities can't be paid, money has to be created, either from commercial banks through deregulation, the government, or through the central bank, but it will happen. I'll leave the link below to Bybit if you want to get a deposit bonus when you start trading on their platform. I'm James, this is MoneyZG. Cheers for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.